So what I'm going to be talking about, and given that I am the last keynote speaker, I appreciate you staying up. I know the room has thinned out considerably since the morning. I won't take it personally. But the thing I wanted to talk about is not about what's happening today, but more around what we believe is going to happen in the future. And I want to sort of leave this as a series of notions or trends that we see, and the challenges that I'm going to pose to you as things to consider through the next year and beyond. So that's the tone of the discussion I want to have. So you won't see me saying this is what's happening, that's what's happening. It's more of a presentation of ideas or trends that we see and observations we have, and some discussion around that, so your creative juices begin to think about it, so that in the coming year you can say, well, what about this? What about that? How can I connect it to what I just heard the other day? So we always learn from history, right? But let's not just use, as we say, just a rear view, mirror view of what's happening, because that helps you so much and only so much. It doesn't take you farther than that. And the question is, how can you use your rear view mirror to project into what's happening, what's going to happen in the future? So a number of what you're going to see, I only have about maybe 12 to 14 content slides. And I'm going to talk about the rear view mirror part of that in the first couple slides to give you a perspective of what is happening. So if you look back at the history of what's been going on, most of you will agree with it, that you take telephony or you take manufacturing or you take banking, we have, through IT, transformed that businesses and the industry significantly. So I was very happy to see that SRII is focusing on the industry orientation of this. Because I was just talking to somebody over lunch, and I was making a comment that gone are the days where you want to be a generalist across the board. You need to have the industry orientation. You need to have the industry specialization injected into your thinking. That's what gives you more value. That's what gives you the differentiation you as an individual and us as an industry, we are collectively looking for. And that's the point that we're making here in terms of the impact of IT. So this is a catchy phrase that says, IT has moved over from being a potential enabler to being an essential enabler, and then from even an essential enabler to be a differentiator. And now, if you really think about it, IT is not just a differentiator anymore, it is the business. Give me one business that doesn't use IT in any way. Even as they say in India, the pawnwala in the corner, or a street vendor is using one or two cell phones, one to conduct business, and the other one to take, missed call messages on what they want. I mean, this whole missed call notion in India is the most innovative thing I've ever found. Because incoming calls are free, and if I want you to call me, I'll call you and hang up. So if you see my number over there, I've given you a missed call and you'll call me back. I mean, so the point is not just around the technology. You can say, so what's the big deal? And the big deal is actually in the innovative application that people come up with, right? One can even stretch that to say it's a business model. So technology by itself becoming part of the business is one thing, but it is driving really innovative thinking in the business itself. That's the key point. So if you look at the history of, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, you can study this, because I know that sitting in the back, you're not able to see all of what's probably being presented here. But the key is, if you look at the impact of IT and where IT has advanced, you can look at it from a method, language, paradigm, technique, application standpoint and say, where are we? So if you read it from left to right, you can see the progression of the impact of IT across these domains. Again, this is not meant to be comprehensive, but meant to be illustrative of what really you could infer from this. The key thing is right here at the corner, right? Where do you see this going, or where do we see this going? I was talking to Hari, who had a poster session around applying manufacturing principles to the construction of components in IT. I'm paraphrasing it. So the point is, how do we get to composition of capabilities. I'm not going to be integrating things as we used to do, as we are currently used to doing. It's a pain. Every integration point is a point of failure or a potential point of failure, right? And we have our own interfaces. However much you say web services and whatnot, there is still a challenge every time you begin to integrate something. Can you dynamically compose them? Manufacturing doesn't talk about integrating pieces. Right? There are assemblies and sub-assemblies that are part of a bigger unit that they assemble together. So why not compose capabilities and have them available, right? That's the extent to which we need to be thinking about. So what the impact of that on the practice of services, I already touched on the fact that you're looking at business model innovations, and I think it's not just business model innovations, but also special and innovative applications. I'll talk about some of these as I go through. So the point behind these two slides is to give you a somewhat of a structured view of what had happened in the past, what we believe could happen in the future, and some of the things that we should be thinking about. Each one of you can come up and add a number of items to this and say this is where it could go, and that's fair game. So among all of the various trends and outlook and innovations that we see happening, I've called out 6. There's about 20 of these that I have on my list, and I thought there could be 6 that is somewhat relevant to you or somewhat new to you. Some of them may be repetitive, and I don't intend to spend much time on it. But you clearly want to sort of get a glimpse of what some of these things are. And as I go through these, I'll talk more about this. But key things being mobile. I know you have had sessions on mobile, but I do want to make a point or two about mobile. And a number of these other topics came from what IBM does on an annual basis called a Global Technology Outlook. So we look at where technology is headed in the next 3 to 5 years and publish a paper and a series of presentations around that. And these topics that you see, uncertain data, analytics, resilient business and services, social business and systems of people, are 4 of the 6 topics that were talked about there. Again, each one of these topics I can talk about for an hour, but I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what the essence of that is, so at least you can think about what does it really mean. The so what of it is I want us to have a discussion around. Now, mobile is something that's fascinating to me. How many of us have, well, everybody has mobile phones, right? Hopefully that's not how many of us have multiple mobile devices? iPad, laptop, cell phone, or things of that nature. Everyone has a number of those. Gone are the days when you have only one of those. So mobile is becoming pervasive, right? Now, that's a consumer-oriented notion of mobile. Now, if you look at how do I then apply that to the work that we do, that's where iPad comes in. That's where some of these smartphones come in, where the private consumer need that is being met by these devices are augmented by the intersection of business capability on top of that, right? So you can say, so what? The so what is something very fascinating in that if you look at, and I'm sure you're aware of this, and I was in South Africa about 3-4 weeks ago, and 2 things that impressed me. The M-Pesa mobile system, mobile money that Kenya had implemented, right, is fascinating in that you don't need money. You don't technically need money per se as cash that you hold in your hand. So workers from the field finish their work, come to me, and I can pay them by entering their wages in a computer that sends them a code to their cell phone. All that they have to do is, they have 2 choices. They can either go and enter that code in an ATM machine and withdraw cash, or they can transfer some of that funds to their landlord to pay their rent, or to someone else who owes their money, who they owe money to. So the point is, the notion of money is just a virtual thing that you have in your bank. How many of us, actually go and count the money that we hold in the bank? We don't, right? I mean, interestingly enough, in Africa, certain people do, because they don't believe that the bank really does have their money. So they go withdraw the money every month, check that there is 2,000 rand or whatever, and then put it back again, saying, now I know you have it. So I'm not putting it down, but I'm just saying that's the nature of where certain cultures are, right? And then the other point is also that the unbanked, people who don't even have a bank account, are around 70–75% across Africa. That's a huge number. So how are you going to reach them? Not through traditional means, right? A couple of days ago, I had an opportunity to listen to an entrepreneur from Nigeria, if I remember right, present at our research strategy meeting. And this guy is an entrepreneur, and what he had done is he has taken out the middlemen he has essentially optimized the supply chain using mobile capability. So this is nothing to do with the technology aspect of it, right? And that's why I say mobile is fascinating to me, in that if I'm a farmer, I can finish my harvesting, bring my whatever, potatoes or milk or eggs that I have to the distributor, and who is locally. He drives there in a truck with a mobile device, counts what I have, and then pays me electronically right then and there, and then takes the material and delivers to wherever it goes to. So the farmer doesn't have to incur the transportation cost of shipping it elsewhere, and then wait for somebody else to pay money, claim some damages for whatever number of eggs that were damaged. So no loss in transportation occurs here from a farmer's standpoint. Their grains or eggs or whatever reaches market quickly, and they get paid right away. Now, I don't know about the mob and the hoodlums in Kenya or Africa who allowed this to happen, because they're always controlling this, right? So somehow this guy has found a way to circumvent that. So the point being, this is nothing to do with technology, but very, very creative. I think it's called AgriBank. Is the name, and his company or the consortium is called Virtual City, www.virtualcity.co.za. I'm willing to, something like that. So check it out. The point is, it's mobile technology, very simple application, applied in very innovative ways. Now comes the question, so what does it mean to the services? Our traditional way of developing applications that use mobile as a channel and all that, gone. We have to think in innovative ways in how agile we can be in delivering these capabilities. That's my point behind agile. The next couple slides talk about uncertain data. Now, the interesting point in this chart is that 80% of all data is going to be uncertain. And then, if you see, by 2015, the traditional enterprise data that we have is only about 20%. The rest of it is uncertain data that consists of any kind of sensor information, video, multimedia information, voice over IP, social media data, blogs, you name it, you got it. All of that is what it is. Why is it uncertain? It's uncertain because there are traditionally three sources of uncertainty that feeds into any of these. One is process uncertainty, where you cannot, deterministically say that going from here to the San Francisco airport for me will take 45 minutes. Depends on route, depends on traffic, so there's no process that you can define that'll tell me. That's your process that feeds into uncertainty. The second is model uncertainty. Anything you say, the moment you say you build a model, it means that you don't have an accurate set of information. You have to build a model that's based on patterns to give you an indication as to where things could be, right? Weather models. Good examples. The third is data uncertainty. Data uncertainty is quite simple. My full name is, well, I usually get mistaken for an Irishman, a Japanese guy, or a Mexican. Now you may be wondering, what the hell are you talking about? The uncertainty in data is what causes that. My name is Raman Harishankar. Sometimes it's misspelled as Ramon, and people look at Ramon in big letters on my name tag and don't read the small Harishankar at the bottom and say, oh, Ramon, you're from Mexico. No, I'm not. Second is, how do I get interpreted as an Irish guy? My office is in Dublin, Ohio, and so most of the conferences listed as Ray Harishankar Dublin. And immediately people think I'm from Dublin, Ohio. Now, the Japanese one is interesting. My Harishankar last name has 11 characters, and you look at most conference applications, they have 10-character boxes, and then they roll off to the next line. So Harishankar fits into the first line. People type that in, and I become Harishankar. So sounds like Japanese. Let's group in with our Japanese friends to have lunch and dinner. So I've had a lot of sushi with my friends from Japan. Not that I'm complaining, but I'm pointing that out as an example as to how a simple thing as misspelled, misinterpreted, misunderstood data can lead to interesting dinner conversations. But it's much more than that, right? Data has to be certain, and you got to be deterministically be able to infer information from that, and that's a question. So what's the other aspect of that, right? And I'm sure you know about the 4 V's of data, right? The 3 V's is what we used to call about volume, velocity, and variety. And now this introduces veracity of data, meaning is it right or wrong? It's not black or white anymore. There's a lot of grayness in that. So the veracity of data, is the data really right or wrong? So the data in doubt is what's called veracity. So I just talked about whether, if you just pick up my name, that in itself, infuses a certain amount of uncertainty. So the point is, we got to know that we have data that is uncertain that we got to deal with. So the traditional enterprise data that we are used to, which is probably more certain, relatively speaking, is no longer the case. We have to deal with a lot of uncertain data. What does that do to the IT systems that we build? What does that do to the healthcare and government applications that we were talking about in the breakout sessions? How do we deal with uncertain data? You have to have more context to make sense of uncertain data. So where is that context going to come from? Right? The context is another additional piece of information that you have to infer and gather or establish based on where your data comes from, right? So sort of leading off of that, so on one hand, you have uncertain data. Now when you start looking at analytics, I'm sure many of you listen to Rob High come over here and talk about the Watson technology that we have. So and many of you may have even watched the Jeopardy game show, you find that Watson ends up coming up with choices, right? And scores them and says the probability of this being the answer is high, so it ranks them. So there is built-in uncertainty and evaluation to validate that uncertainty that's part of the system. Now, context wasn't built very much into it. Otherwise, it would not have answered Toronto as an airport in the US, right? But the point behind that is simply that you're no longer able to, or no longer looking for a finite answer. We're looking for choices. You're looking for 3 or 4 possible outcomes. And even then, it won't be smack in the middle of option number 2. It could be somewhere between option 2 and 3, but closer to option 2 perhaps. So we got to deal with, as we build systems, as we look at the data that's coming together, whether from the industry or from any of the other sources, you have to make sure that we're able to deal with the context of the data and the fact that it's uncertain, and that you need to have not just one answer, but possibly a set of answers from which you can choose. So how do we do that? This is the only complex slide I hope I have that you got to look at, but a pretty interesting slide too. And you've heard about big data and analytics as well in some of these. And the key is, given that we have a variety of data that's coming at you, right? How do you know which data is what you need to look at to solve a problem, right? If you look at sentiment analysis, you want to know what people are thinking about the new product you just introduced into the market, right? Where would you go? You could go into a set of textual, maybe, some relational, and definitely some social network data. Maybe you should also be interested in some video images of people looking at the product. And you can capture their mood by a focused set of video cameras when they're reviewing the product. Why not? So regardless, you've got to be selective in what sources of data you need to look at when you're doing some analysis. Now, in some other example, you should be looking at geospatial and time series data, perhaps, and so you should be ignoring some of the other textual and perhaps video data because it's of no consequence to you. In security systems, we clearly look at visual and video and image data. So it depends on what your domain of application is that you're looking to process. You need to be looking at the right set of data. But that alone is not sufficient. You then have to turn around and say, what kind of filtering and extraction do I do? There's about 13 million tweets that may come through on a given topic on a given day. Do you need all of them? You may end up using only, 1% or half a percent of that relative to what you need to solve. So you need to filter the data so that you end up with a set that is meaningful and relevant to what you're trying to solve. Again, there are techniques that one can use and apply to do that. The third stage is where you say, how do I then extract some analytics out of that? I already talked about adding context to it to give some meaning. So you do that, and then you apply an appropriate set of filters. Appropriate set of analytic engines that can infer that data you're looking for. So the problem cannot be solved by one size fits all. You got to have the right set of analytics for the right set of data to solve the right problem that you're looking to solve, right? So the point is, as you go through and look at some of the analytics engines or analytics challenges that customers face and how we can come up with solutions for that, you got to think about not just one analytics engine that's going to solve this problem, or you just don't need to you shouldn't be looking at a specialized tool that will solve the problem for them. You should be looking at a combination of these tools that can play well together, that you can assemble at will, because given a problem, I may choose a subset of this set of data that's coming here. So the variety of data I will use to subselect. I'll have a variety of engines that I can apply to create algorithms, to create useful data, and I'll put them up in a customized way to yield the answers I'm looking for. Now, next customer, same domain, I may have completely different set of data to look at, or I may have to change that. So we cannot afford to create tools, methods, and approaches. Going back to what does it mean to the IT, I submit that we cannot afford to create custom tools, custom approaches and methods for our clients to use if they have to go and solve this problem. We have to come up with sort of a platform approach that yields the flexibility to the user to select the data they want, apply the filter they need, assemble the results in the way they need to arrive at the conclusions they're looking for. The next one is resilient systems. And in this case, we all know this, but we probably don't stop to think about this. When we had the earthquake and the tsunami in Japan, it caused a couple of things. One is serious car parts shortage. The other is the shortage of BT resin, which is used in creating all of the printed circuit boards. I think it's bisalamide terrazine or something like that. And that resulted in a production issue for that, because 95% of the world's production of that BT resin comes from that area in Japan. So we were affected by that. Now, we can go on down this and look at the volcano in Iceland caused millions of dollars of damage, billions of dollars of damage, right? Flight cancellations was one, personal, and then, as a consequence, economies were affected by that. So a series of, it's like a domino effect. One natural disaster or man-made disaster can easily cascade into a series of actions. And closer to home, you could say, well, the fraud that happens, right? Or the platform outage that occurs, the identities that were leaked by LinkedIn, or not leaked, but hacked into from LinkedIn. All of these will have some cascading effect. How do we know what the impact is? And what's the impact of that? So the question is, so what? The so what aspect is actually, we got to build systems that are cognizant of the fact that they are not, and of the fact that they are part of a larger ecosystem, and that they will be part of some cascading effect of, they'll either be the effect of some cascading effect that occurs, or they'll be impacted by something that occurred, and now they have to deal with it. So either way, they have to be resilient in more ways than one. So the question is, how do we design, build, and deploy resilient systems? Right? That's something to think about. And it's not just about the software aspect of it. It starts from the physical infrastructure, goes to the application, goes to the securities that you apply across all of them. So it covers the entire stack of what we build and deploy as IT systems. The key is, what can you do about it? What can we think about it? How can we begin addressing some of these? And for some industries, this is more important than it is perhaps in other industries. So we got to take that dimension too. So the more you start looking at the impact of, impact of this on industry systems, you have to think about what kind of systems can be built here, right? Now, the next topic I teed up was around vertical specialized systems. What do I mean by that? We always, there are a number of posters that I saw this earlier today, where we were talking about industry application of certain technology or certain capability or certain optimization approach. The question is there a value, is there an opportunity here rather in building vertical systems? What do I mean by these are special purpose or fit for purpose systems that end up addressing the entire stack? Earlier I talked about the fact that the commodity general purpose services role that we traditionally play is no longer going to be valuable or as valuable as it was before, and we need the industry specialization or industry orientation to provide the differentiation. Take that a step further and say, why not apply that to the systems that we build and deploy? Now you may say Netezza is one of those. True, but that's one of example that you can give. Why not have a certain healthcare claims processing system built and optimized from the ground up? Why not have some supply chain optimization process or supply chain process where optimization is a key, where multiple warehouse product management and distribution is going to be managed from one central location from an optimization standpoint? It's a challenging optimization problem. Now, why not have some of those built in to and push down the stack to the hardware? And can it be embedded within that? So why can't we have these vertical systems that are extremely good at what they do and provide you with certain configuration? This may be a way to go towards the assembly of products or assembly of higher level capabilities, where you have taken a functional entity, functional unit, and then driven a certain architecture around that, and it's a black box. Now, what is the implication of that? Are there any opportunities here? There's some work coming out in this space that you may want to pay some attention to and see if this poses any opportunities or creates some new challenges. Last couple of things, last two slides I have here to talk about are on the social media and social business. Now, we all talk about social media and we say, oh, it's fascinating, it's interesting, and all that. But how do you monetize that? What is the business around that, right? How many people have created a successful social business? We can always point to a set of entrepreneurs who have begun to make a difference there. But at a broader level, what is the impact? Who was it? The company that Microsoft bought, Yammer. That company does not use email. It only uses social media to communicate. Why not? Right? So the point behind that is, they have sort of you can say it's a monetization of social business or social media simply because they've taken out a traditional product that we are all used to using called email and said, I'm going to put social media as a replacement for that. So now social media has become part of the business. And this morning I read in a news clipping that I received where I think it was Toronto Dominion Bank, the CIO was talking about the fact that they have now all of their 76,000 employees on a collaboration tool. And they were quoting a McKinsey's report that said 25% productivity increase in knowledge sharing is occurring among knowledge workers because they're now able to collaborate. So that's the business impact of social media, right, within their own environment. How many companies are successfully doing it, and what's the impact of that? I strongly believe that social business is an area where you'll begin to apply a combination of the social media capabilities in much more business-oriented ways than we are looking at Facebook, as an example, right? So how can you make your organization or organizations be much more effective in using social tools? Right? And this is something that, again, touches on the education side of it, for example. I'll start from there. I have two daughters, right? Both of them are in college. And when they were in high school 3 years ago, I would walk up to them and I'll find that their laptop has about 6 windows, at least. And then one of them will have clearly their school homework that they're published on the web available to them so they can begin to work on it. Obviously, there will be a browser window open where they're doing research, which is, to me, is cut and paste. But they do research, they do search for things. Then they clearly have email as another window. Then they have a number of chat windows open with their friends. And there are a couple of windows that they don't want me to see. I don't know what's there, but surely there's something going on there that I shouldn't be seeing. But the point is, they are being very productive. They get interrupted left and right with somebody texting them about some question or the other. I don't know, I forgot the cell phone sitting on the side where they receive text messages too. And they're very productive. They do well. They're able to research and understand and collaborate at the same time. Now, first I used to think this is not the way you should be studying. You should be focusing, right? Then I said, look, let me look at the outcome. If they're getting poor grades, then I have a reason to worry about. But they're not my generation, right? I need focus to get anything done. But for them, you give them one thing to do, they're bored. They're watching TV and doing it, or listening to music and doing it. So that's the generation of children and workforce that we are going to see. So how effective is our business, enterprises, and processes that we have where we straitjacket them into this is the way you have to do work? I'll poke at IBM itself. We have a strong suite, read strong equals complex here, strong suite of tools for doing anything. It's not user-friendly, totally not intuitive, and if you begin doing software development using any of those tools, man, that's from the 60s or 70s, if you ask me. It's that, in the way it's that far back generation. Maybe that's one of the reasons neither of my kids went into computer science. But the point is they don't. It's not just them, it's the generation of people. I think, Hema, you were talking this morning about 1% of the kids in the UK focus group that you had wanted to go into this area. Maybe they look at this and say, it's not exciting, it's not sexy, it's not interesting, I don't want to be in this. Now, why should we continue to give them the same kind of user interfaces and user experience? Why can't we take them and put them into, even if it is claims processing, or pick any standard process that we have, why can't we make it very exciting to them? Why can't the interfaces be so intuitive and also more agile that they can do 5 things at the same time? While they're processing something, they can continue to do something else. Effectively leverage the broader bandwidth that they are able to process simultaneously than we allow them to. We equate productivity to single channel and then focus. I think they're debunking that. right? So people enablement, that's what I'm talking about here. People enablement is understanding what they're capable of doing. None of the enterprises, I'm generalizing here, but none of the enterprises right now take advantage of the individual's desire and interest in a systematic manner. We all have our discussions with our bosses saying, this is what I want to do in my career, right? And it may be once a quarter if you're lucky, every 6 months, if you're organized, and never in some cases. So how are we going to deal with the next generation of people coming into the workforce if we continue to do that? It just simply won't happen. So we have to enable them, not just from leveraging their ability to process multiple things as an example, but understanding what their career goals are and how they are performing in their work, and then giving them opportunities to improve. Why can't we create a claims processing system where a number of the claims processors, all of them start off doing the same kind of work, but we can instrument certain metrics so that we find out who is doing better over a period of time, and time measured in weeks, right? And then say, after 4 weeks, I find that this first set of people are doing extremely well. I'm going to give them more complex claims to process right away. I don't want to wait for an annual assessment. If you do well, I'm going to give you more. Here is where it ties to some of the educational aspects. If I remember right, we saw, I don't know whose presentation it was, maybe it was Denning's presentation, where he had Chris Kahn, I think, as one of the examples of the new ways of coming up with educational materials, right? If you look at the fundamental philosophy behind that, it is learning at your own pace, right? If I don't understand something, I can go back and learn that. Go back and relearn that until I have mastered that. Then I move on. There are certain areas that are good for me, certain areas probably I'm not good at learning quickly. Why not apply the same principles to corporate work, such as claims processing, where certain areas of claims processing aren't intuitive to me? So allow me to spend some more time learning and applying, and then move on. Don't ding me for that. That's just the way I am. I may be good at doing something else. So find out what we are good at doing and apply approaches to maximize and optimize my efficiency there. That's the kind of stuff that we should be looking at. So this cuts across all of the themes that we have been talking about, and not just limited to just education or whatever. Application of that in the industry as well. I've already talked about the people content, and then understanding the people analytics, who is doing well where, and be able to leverage that. So I know I've gone through a series of topics here, guys. They seem to be somewhat disconnected, but you take any one of them, you can apply them across all, right? Mobile may be a way by which you can, help these individuals understand a particular area where they're not familiar with. I'm using an Nikon camera. There's some feature I want to use. I just don't know how. Can I quickly look it up using an iPhone app? Why not? I just need to understand. I won't read a 100-page manual. Nobody does. But I want to read just that one section where I want to understand what I need to do to adjust the lighting here, right? Or make my photographs come better. So just in time or in time learning, and just give me that quantum of learning. Don't give me a 300-page manual to memorize. That's the kind of systems and approaches and technologies we'll have to be going. So if I look at what is the one common theme that cuts across all of this, it's that. We have to be adaptable. That's what it comes down to, right? The more adaptable you are, and the more you're able to meet the changing needs of the marketplace, you will find that we will not just survive, but we'll succeed. Thank you, guys.